Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I'm also a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over a very common request that I have on my channel. You guys always say you want more videos like this, and it's about the many tests that avoidance test you before they pick you or choose you or commit to you, right? Of course, you can test them too, by the way. When I mean testing, more particularly, I'm talking about like them vetting you, but some of these can be a little bit triggering. So I don't make these videos too often, but it is one of my most highly requested videos. And you guys always say you want a more updated version or you want more current stuff based on the things that I'm seeing in my caseload. And so, yes, some of these things, I haven't really brought up before just because a lot of these are things that just was brought to me recently with my caseload. The very last one, I'm going to be very honest, is probably going to be extremely triggering. And so that's why I kept it last. And so before we touch that very last one, I'm going to tell you, okay, this is the last one. It's going to be triggering so that you guys can click off because I am telling you I know it's going to be triggering for some of you guys, okay? So these are not necessarily situations that they put you in, but more so that they watch for these things when it occurs. In fact, some of them they might put you in this situation, but I don't agree with that. I think that can be pretty manipulative. People do that regardless of attachment style. But most of the time we're saying that these are things that they don't necessarily put you in. They're just watching, okay? And the reason why they're doing this is because they are testing for compatibility. This is usually subconscious, by the way. Loyalty, trust, or commitment. And while every individual is unique, these are some common ways. Often this is why avoidance takes so long to commit because they're still processing and testing to really see if they want to be with you. Not all the time is this what's happening. It could be other barriers, but this is pretty common, okay? And so the very first one is they check to see how you react when they tell you you're overreacting or they see you in a negative light for one instant. Maybe they'll say you seem manipulative when you do this. Like, can you clarify? Whatever it is, they tell you something negative about yourself, and you can do the same with them, right? You might say, sometimes you feel shut off from me. I don't know what's going on. They might say, sometimes I think you're overreacting. I don't know what to do about that. And they're trying to check, are you going to explain yourself calmly? You might say, no, I'm not being manipulative. Or, yeah, you're right. I do overreact, but I'm not trying to put that on you. They're also trying to check, are you going to take accountability to see some reality of it? Or are you going to deny it? I'm not overreacting. It's just because you're avoidant. It's because you're distant. You're not meeting my needs. Or you're the only person that's ever said I'm manipulative. I'm not manipulative. Whatever it is. They're trying to see how you react. And that makes them recognize if they are safe in this relationship or not, right? The next one is, this is pretty common with fearful avoidance. The dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant is the one testing. But the person who does this, who they're testing, is usually going to be fearful avoidance. I see anxious preoccupied do this too, but it's way more common with fearful avoidance, okay? It's when you say something and do something else. So let's say the example is you said, I think we need a break because you're mad at them. And then, in maybe a couple hours or a day or two, you text them right away and say that you want to get back with them. And maybe you're mad at them that they didn't fight for the relationship. And so this is very confusing to avoidance, and avoidant individuals don't like this. They think that it's like you're playing games. The reason why I said fearful avoidance do this is because usually when fearful avoidance do this, they're not playing games. They actually are reacting to their feelings. I need a break. And then after the break is over or the avoidance says it, then their abandonment issue comes in. And so they say, no, I want to get back with you. But avoidants don't like that because it's very confusing to them. In their mind, they're thinking, okay, this relationship is probably going to be a lot. And I don't really know if this is something I want to deal with. This is not really something I want to sign up for. Sometimes that's what they're feeling, which is why they test this particular one. Because they're seeing, are you going to go back on your word? Are you someone I can trust? It comes from trust. So let's give another example that might be a little bit more common. You might say something like, okay, I'm going to give you space. And they say, I thank you, I appreciate it. And then maybe 2 hours later, you're texting them 2 or 3 paragraphs about something that you're upset about. And so, yes, you did try. And I can see that, right? Because it's been 2 hours. So you definitely tried. But maybe you failed at it for whatever reason. And this is recoverable. Of course, all of these are. But usually what ends up happening is they might point out, see, you're coming back on this, or I can't get space, or they just might shut down. And so what you can do is you can say, I apologize. I'm still trying, and it's just, a failure on my part, or change is not linear. I hope that you trust me that I genuinely do want to change. And, I didn't mean it like that. You can still have your space and I can handle myself. And then we can talk about this when we're feeling a little better. So you're still able to clarify these things. Avoidant individuals, as long as you take accountability, typically this is not like a detrimental thing, okay? But it is something to think about because a lot of people don't realize this is what it looks like on the outside when you guys are just going through your emotions, going through everything you're feeling. You don't realize how much avoidants take these things to heart and how seriously they take some of these things. And that's not necessarily your responsibility, but it is something that happens, okay? The next one is you struggle to de-escalate or add de-escalation techniques when things are escalating, and instead you tend to escalate it further, okay? I know that probably was a lot, so why don't we give an example so we can clarify, okay? Let's say in a relationship, the avoidant individual, I'm not saying this is wrong or right, maybe they were frustrated and they got angry. And they said, you know, you're too much. Like, this is why I can't be in a relationship because every time I'm always picked on or I'm always yelled at. Maybe that's their defense. And they get mad, and they probably shouldn't have done that. They were triggered, but instead what you do is now you're triggered too. And so you're like, how could you say that? Like, that's not fair. I knew you didn't love me. And so now you guys are both escalating, keeps going higher and higher and higher. And I'm not saying this is just your fault, but avoidant individuals, the reason why they test this or they pay attention to this is because they start thinking, okay, that means I'm not allowed to have emotions because every time I have emotions, you have an emotion too. I don't have space to just have my mistake of an emotion, right? Because avoidant individuals, a lot of you guys know, they don't really express much emotions. That's part of why they struggle in relationships. And so the moment that they do have an expression, whether it's negative or positive, if you take the space for that emotion, I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose, they start feeling like, okay, you don't even know how to de-escalate. You're always getting triggered by every little thing. I can't show my emotions. Not that you're doing that, but that's what's going through their mind. So what is de-escalation? What makes this a little bit easier so that they don't feel that you are doing this? Instead, if they crash out, they get upset or whatever, you might say, okay, I hear you. You're right. And you just calm down, or you let them kind of ramble or express their emotion and you kind of stay quiet. You let them talk and you don't take it personal. I had a couple couples that had this very similar problem where the avoidant individual started to admit that, and this is more common with male avoidance, by the way, they admit that when they're angry, they say things they don't mean, which is it's not a good thing, but people do this, especially if you're avoidant, because sometimes these emotions are bottling up for a long time, avoidant men even more so. And what happens is what bothered him the most, which is valid to some extent, and this happens a lot, any couple that's doing this, they feel like they wish that you could just let some of these things go instead of hang on to it. And sometimes why people hang on to it is because they are so used to escalating an emotion. I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose, and I'm probably not explaining this right, but you're so triggered by what they said, you believe it to be valid instead of de-escalating and also calibrating your own emotions, right? You recognize, okay, they're just having a moment. It's not always me. It's not personal, and you're able to de-escalate. You don't make the argument more than it is, and then you guys break up, and then it's like hot and cold. No, whatever happens, you let them have their moment. Sometimes you have your moment, but they're having theirs right now, and you keep it steady. Avoidant individuals want to see, are you guys able to do that? Because they feel like relationships need this. That sometimes one person can be more emotional, and the other person can hold the fort down, right? The next one is they test your independence. They see how often you're dropping plans for them to hang out with them, how often you want to stay over. And this one, I guess, is a little triggering too, not anywhere near as the one that's going to come after this. But a lot of times what I see, and I actually have a couple caseloads right now like this, where their partner, let's say a girlfriend, so let's say they're a male, they have a girlfriend, and they actually see that their partner is becoming more and more willing to adjust to them. And so they might even see that their partner is, oh, I was going to hang out with my friend, but let's hang out with, why not you come along, right? Or they want to stay over more often. They might ask if they can go on a trip with you and your friends. And so they're seeing that the independence is decreasing and it's becoming more and more dependent. And the avoidant individual might start feeling suffocated. So they watch those things and they try and see, are you going to wind back a little bit if I say something? Are you going to do it by yourself? Is this relationship sustainable if you're always trying to get closer and closer and closer? Because I will always need my space. And so they're seeing that. And the fifth one is going to be triggering. So anybody who wants to click off, go right ahead, okay? We're just going to go through the fifth point, and then I'm going to summarize it, and we're just going to get out of here, okay? So the very last one is they test. I mean, I feel actually bad saying this, but this is so common, so common. Almost a lot of avoidants have brought this to me in session. And it's more common with male avoidants where their partner is female, okay? They test how loud and animated you are in bed. I know, okay? Sorry. Avoidant individuals perceive this as unnecessary. They perceive it as needy. They perceive it as trying too hard to please. So they watch for those behaviors in bed where you're loud, or maybe a roommate is saying like, can she be a little bit quieter? And they're seeing those things because then they perceive this is somebody who their self-worth is tied to how they perform in bed. And I know this a lot, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because it's about some, bedroom intimacy. We can't go into details about YouTube, but you can imagine other things that they're doing in bed to try and prove their partner that they're valuable as a person, as a woman, or whatever, because it's more common with female partners. So I'll let your imagination go there. I'm not going to say it, but hopefully you got the gist of it. So let's go ahead and summarize, and then we'll roll out of here, okay? So the first one is that they see how you react when they tell you something more negative about yourself. Are you going to be calm? Are you going to be defensive? Are you going to take accountability? Something along those lines, right? The next one is when you say something and you do another. Example, you say we need a break, and then you come back like 10 minutes later and you get mad. They're not fighting for the relationship. They're testing that, okay? The third one is they see if you're struggling to de-escalate when things are escalating. So every time they're upset, you get upset too, okay? The fourth one is they test your independence. Are you dropping plans? Are you always wanting to stay over with them? Are you trying to get on every trip with them or hang out with them as much as possible? And the fifth one is they test how animated you are in bed. More common with male avoidance with a female partner, okay? I hope this video is helpful. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.